politics of fear and hate are wrong. We love you and politics of compassion and love are right.
We are not going back.
All right, welcome everybody to episode 18 of Raised Red, Living Blue. Sloan Roden is on assignment this week, so Thomas Poole is stepping up to fill these shoes. Now, Thomas, I've talked about you on this podcast many times. I've never named you.
Okay.
But I have talked about you and the fact that, you know, this has been a tough transition into this MAGA era that we're in. Yeah. Yes. But you're a perfect guest, I think, to have on because you also were raised red and now living blue. How did that transformation happen?
Yeah, so born and raised in the South primarily, son of an Army brat, both parents from the South. You know, my dad was a combat veteran in the Army, Vietnam veteran, 5-time combat tour, so just very staunchly, conservative, old school, born in 1941. My mom was born in 1945, so very old school, old Southern type people. I grew up outside of living in Germany and some California and places like that where my dad was stationed, mostly in South Georgia. And so I grew up, very typical red-blooded American male, grew up very conservative, thought Ronald Reagan was the greatest thing ever. My whole family was it was Republican all the way.
Yeah.
And so I kind of followed in those footsteps. I grew up an Army brat. I joined the Marine Corps. I was a Marine Corps veteran. When I joined the Marine Corps, I was very Republican. In fact, I did a public speaking course in college before I joined the Marine Corps where it was a persuasive speech and they wanted to do something controversial. And so I picked supporting Georgia's existing state flag, which had the stars and bars on it. That's how conservative I was at one point. Very Republican. This goes all the way to, 2008, Barack Obama being the Democratic nominee. I was right in line with everything I was told, all the noise from the conservative side, Fox News and the like, Rush Limbaugh, that Barack Obama was going to undo America.
Yeah,
all the downfall of America, traditional American values. We were going to be communist, socialist. Constitution was going to go by the wayside. I just thought, man, we got to elect John McCain. I mean, what? Oh my God! So I was, as recently as 2008, was fully still Republican. There were little cracks though, and what started that, to kind of answer your question, started me to waver a little bit was when I was in the Marine Corps. I was at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, stationed there in 2003 when the Iraq invasion started. And right about that time, or I guess it was a few months past, President Bush came to Camp Lejeune to speak to the Marines. I got selected to be on the stage behind him with, probably about 50 or so, 100 Marines on the stage behind him. And so I'm right there, I'm excited. You see all the choppers coming in, all the staff. It's a big deal, big production.
Yeah.
I'm all excited. And then he gets there and he starts talking about, we were there to liberate these oppressed peoples from a crazy dictator.
Right.
We were there to, that's why we were there. We were there to bring democracy to this part of the world and to remove this madman and help these oppressed Iraqi people.
Right.
And being in the Marine Corps and being there every day and knowing that's not what the mission is. That's not why we're here. Let's be honest. It just felt like it just felt so fake and so disingenuous. And I remember standing there on that stage and just like, gosh, I'm trying to reconcile it in my mind. Like, this is not right. This is just BS being put out there. It's propaganda, really. And that was the first time that I kind of felt like a little bit of a waver in my hardcore, conservative Republican stance. And then I guess fast forward to that, although, so 5 years later, I'm still Republican, but I had little moments of just kind of like hearing things that didn't reconcile my mind. And then sometime between Barack Obama getting elected the first time and the second time was my full revelation, full conversion, I guess, if you will. All the things that I was told that was Barack Obama was going to usher in didn't happen. None of this stuff happened. It was one thing after another. That was just fear tactics, things that they were going to come take your guns. That was one thing.
Yeah.
Never happened. And so and I've always been able to kind of think for myself. I've always been kind of a person that, when I was in church, kid, I'd always ask, well, why are we going to fall on the sword for this one Bible verse, but we let these other Bible verses, we don't listen to those. I'd always kind of think for myself and would not get answers. And so I think that led to me being able to kind of think through some of these things and kind of just reconcile, hey, the Democrats are not, the enemies of American values. They're not the enemy. They're the other side. They're Americans just like we are. And furthermore, the things that I'm seeing them do are things that are actually helping Americans, whereas all I hear about from the side that I grew up thinking was right all the time were just fear-mongering, and not really solving problems of average Americans. They were looking out for, big business interests. And so over time, I got to that realization, and really kind of like religion, you kind of have to question these things that are instilled into you at a young age. You have to kind of be able to question and think for yourself and go, okay, let me look at this objectively, and it doesn't add up or it doesn't make sense. And so I was able to do that over time. And so I don't remember exactly, there wasn't a aha moment or anything like that, but it was just kind of between the first and second elections for Barack Obama. I voted for Barack Obama in 2012. And that was the first time I voted Democrat in my life, and the beginning of me pretty much voting Democrat. I know I voted Democrat for every president since then. There's a few elections, I think, state level, whatever, I voted Republican, but overwhelmingly Democrat. And like I said, there was no real aha moment, but it was just kind of being able to think about things objectively and get outside of the things that you're, almost, like I was taught, oh my God, if you vote Democrat, it's like you're a traitor to your American values, or you're a traitor to America, and after a while I was able to get out of that. I'm like, no, you're not. You're just looking at the other side. Break away from the propaganda, see it for what it is, and make an informed choice. So no aha moment, just kind of a collection of things happening, little things that added up to me thinking for myself and thinking objectively and kind of converting over. So.
Well, religion, I think, is very relevant, right, to the Republican Party, because it was the party of, and I say was the party of family values. They backed the blue. It was, so it was the party of law and order. It was the party of Christianity, really, right? Mm-hmm. So we've definitely seen some big cracks in the moral high ground, I think, that the Republican Party's always taken. And I've talked about this on the show a lot. I mean, I would hear this growing up, that, the reason there were earthquakes and wildfires in California is because a bunch of stinking liberals out there.
Same with me. I've heard that too.
Yeah, but there was this is part, I think, of the genius of the Republican Party, is that I think in the 70s, they really started this politics of fear. It's never let up since the 70s. Mm-hmm. And so here we are.
They play the long game.
and that's why, we share text back and forth about what's going on. And, that is, I think, just one of these foundational building blocks of the Republican Party that the Democrats could really learn from in terms of their messaging. When they go on political talk shows, they all have the same talking points, and the Democrats don't. But I wanted to just also let the audience know, your whole family is pretty much Republican, and you have some MAGAs in there, right?
Yes, my whole family, both sides, plus my wife's family. I mean, it's pretty much,
y'all are surrounded.
We're surrounded. I cannot think of, my wife's sister is probably the only person that I can think of off the top of my head that's not at least very conservative Republican. There may be a few others who are not MAGA, but most of them are. I mean, whatever Donald Trump says is gospel. If I come from a military background, federal government background, and I mean, if you could, I use John McCain as an example all the time. I know it's been forever, but when Donald Trump, basically said he likes his war heroes to not be captured.
Yeah, that the John McCain thing is a really great example, because I'll go to military veterans that are friends of mine, and I'll go, hey, how do you square that up?
Right.
And it's I don't know brainwashing is a fair way to describe what's happening with them, but they have some way to reconcile. They're like, oh yeah, well, John McCain gave up our secrets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So he talked. So,
Yep.
He didn't keep his mouth shut. So Trump's right about him. When I talked to one of my military veteran friends on the right before the election, there was like, I'm going to butcher this, but there was like 400 people on the Republican side, all like from high ranking, Mike Pence, George Bush, all the way down to like staffers that were like not supporting Donald Trump. How do you square that? I mean, this is like unprecedented. This has never happened in history. Oh, well, that's the Republican establishment. And some of these people, their messaging is, on Election Day 2024, the Republican Party lost too. There's like this new faction of the Republican Party.
Yep.
So, but the John McCain is a great example. For me, I was really torn because I read the John McCain books. I mean, I love John McCain.
I did too. I read the book.
And was like, man, but I also really thought Obama was pretty cool. So I was really torn between those two, but it was really when Sarah Palin came into the picture that I was like, son of a bitch. Like, and that to me, Sarah Palin was really kind of the birth of MAGA for me when I look back at it.
I agree with that. That's a great point, actually.
I mean, if you don't think Trump was studying Sarah Palin and what she was doing, you got another thing coming. But just a great example, and it carries on today with like, the demonizing of his family, and then now it's the Cheneys, and it's just, anybody that kind of stands up and has something to say. But what is it like though for you, like Thanksgiving, Christmas, like, because you're really, for you, let me know if this is fair enough.
Okay.
Like, this is not like you're deeply concerned about the country.
Yes.
As a
Very
patriot.
concerned. Yes.
So this is not like a moral high ground, or you're not an elitist looking down on anybody. No. You're a military veteran who's like, what the hell is, what are we allowing to happen? Right. But how are you keeping your sanity? Just because, you see things like on social media, like your family making these comments, and you're like, I'm related to this person?
Yes.
How could they say that? How do y'all keep the peace?
You know what? That's a great question, and it's tough. It really is tough. I'm just kind of naturally, I don't know, I've got a knack, I guess, for just kind of bottling things up. And so when I'm there, I just kind of bottle it up. Every year it gets tougher the more that we're in this, whatever you want to call this. I've got one relative in particular who, posts all day, every day. All the talking points of the constant coordinated drumbeat of disinformation. Believes it wholeheartedly. And to kind of go back to where I kind of got lost in thought was to say that, I thought I brought up John McCain early, way before all these years and years of propaganda, when it was still fresh. And even back then, I look around like, none of y'all are upset by this. Y'all are military folks, government folks. They weren't upset. They weren't told to be outraged, is what it all comes down to, which is kind of my big a topic, I guess, for later, or another topic altogether, is that I think a lot of the problem that we're here is people don't think for themselves, or are told what to think more and more, because we're connected all the time. We're always told, here's what you need to think. Here's what, And so anyway, just to say that, I say that to say that that's the environment I was in even back then. And so I look around, I'm like, you don't have a problem with him saying John McCain was a guy who ran away from military service, and Donald Trump did not serve, who got, bone spurs to not serve, saying that a guy who spent 5.5 years in a North Vietnamese prison camp, was tortured every day, he's calling that guy not a hero, and you guys are okay with that? Like,
I raised $1 million for him. It's a lot of money. I supported him. He lost. He let us down. But, he lost. So I never liked him as much after that, because I don't like losers. But Frank, let me get to it. He hit me. He's not a war hero.
He's a war hero.
He's a war hero.
5.5 years.
He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay? I hate to tell you.
Do you agree with that?
He's a war hero because he was captured, okay? You can have, and I believe perhaps he's a war hero, but right now he said some very bad things about a lot of people.
And so you're going to take that guy, you're going to take what Trump's saying about him, who never served, and they all did. It was just, that was the first moment that just kind of blew me away, and so I've lived with that going forward, like, wow, that didn't move them. And then as the years have gone by, to just see there's no floor, there's no bottom. And so I guess over the years, to answer your question, I've reconciled that in my mind. And I know there's no changing them. You could debate it or bring up something or try to say something, but there's no changing them. And so I just go through. They could say, "Hey, the sky's yellow," and I go, "Yeah, it is yellow. Sure is." There's just whatever they say. Yep. The best thing to do is just let it go. So that's the way I get through the holidays, is to just keep that in mind. Just let it go. They want that. Don't give it to them.
Yeah. All right. So last little kind of question,
Okay.
talking point on this. I have been of the opinion, of the belief, and really of the hope that, that things are going to get so bad under this administration that it's just going to force people together. It's forcing people to the table.
Mm-hmm.
You see like podcasts like the Lincoln Project has a Democrats on, has Republicans on. I'm seeing, people have conversations. You see Gavin Newsom having conversations. I know that can be I don't know how you feel about that. It can be kind of a point of contention with a lot of folks, but
Yeah.
I think it's good for people to have conversations.
I do too.
I mean, Bill Maher went to the White House last week.
Right.
I'm all for that. I'm not these people, when the Morning Joe folks went down to Mar-a-Lago, the left wing had to come apart. I think that's good. But now I'm wondering, like, what if I'm wrong?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what if this just keeps, because there's a lot of people, I think you're one of them, that just thinks that not anytime sooner we're going to come out of this whole MAGA mindset, MAGA era, or we might be headed straight for like real deal authoritarianism.
Yes.
Where do you think this is going to go? Do you have any hope? I mean, like, shit, what if these tariffs, this is what I was thinking about last night as Diane and I were sitting in bed. Because what I've done now, I'll tell you what I've done now, okay? So I used to watch CNN 24/7. That's the only thing I'd watch. So now she does her mortgage work in the closet, our master bedroom closet. She comes out about 8 or 9, and then we'll watch some series or something. So I'm limiting my CNN. But right before we transitioned over to like entertainment TV last night, I was like, shit, what if he pulls this shit off?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and then he's like, what if he just somehow, there's been, I don't think we're seeing a lot of incompetence, but what if?
Meaning, what if he makes this successful?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What if somehow these tariffs work? I mean, they have pushed all their chips to the center of the table. You got this press secretary. I mean, she is just a nasty, but she's like, she's like, oh, it's gonna work.
Right.
The Trump has surrounded himself with some of the brightest, economic minds on the planet, and this is gonna work. And there are some good things happening, like $4 trillion. Invested in American businesses, bringing jobs back to America, America manufacturing, things like that. So I'm like, well, shit, what if? What do you think? Do you think he's going to be able to pull something off? Where do you think this is going to end?
So, yeah, I don't think he's going to be able to pull it off. That would be nice if well, on one hand, it'd be nice. But on the other hand, gosh, I would give him, then we would be gone. I mean, democracy would be over. It'd be a full-on tyranny. But yeah, I really don't think it's going to work. I mean, you look at if you just study economics, if you just listen to economists, and you just know, what's happened in the past when we've instituted mass-scale tariffs. It's been done, 3 times in our country's history. One of those times was the Great Depression.
Which there's an opinion that's what led to the Great Depression.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of
the catalyst.
Was the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act is generally regarded as one of the main catalysts for starting the Great Depression. And so I saw a thing on social media today that said something about the 3 times it's happened there's been basically 100 years or so apart from the 3 times. And you needed that. You needed everybody that was around the last time to be dead so they don't remember and it happened again. And I was like, there's probably some truth to that. I'm not educated enough to know the first time in the 1800s. I know it was bad. I don't know how bad. I can't speak to that. But I know the Great Depression, and I know that the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act was one of the big instigators of the Great Depression. Kind of amplified the problems and jump-started things to the Great Depression. And here we are again. And so the thing I saw said something, well, maybe the third time's a charm. I don't think it is. I think if you just look at what they teach you in business school, I got a business degree. I'm not optimistic. I think that some of it there will be investment in America. So it's not all bad. There will be some companies that will invest more in America plants or manufacturing facilities, but not enough to offset things or make them better.
What do you think? So this is my curiosity, is that if it goes to hell in a handbasket, and this is one of the worst recessions that we've ever had in our history, and things just get really, really bad, are your family members still going to be posting stupid shit on Facebook, or are they going to come around and go, damn? I mean, you don't think there's ever going to be there where they're like, Thomas, we should have listened to you. Or,
no, so I can unequivocally say that will never be said by my family members. Nobody will. Thomas, we should have listened to you will never be uttered.
Yeah.
That's safe to say.
It was just the Republicans that filibustered him or something. Like, I mean, the Democrats, if they would have gotten out of Trump's way, he would.
Oh yeah.
These judges, if it wasn't for the judges, it would all.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever. I'll say it 100 times probably on this podcast, but I call it the constant coordinated drumbeat of disinformation. Whatever they say is what they'll believe. My family members. I am fully of the belief that there's nothing he can do to lose them. He could take their retirement benefits. Brandon thinks I'm crazy, but I swear to this. He could take their money. He could cut it in half to say, you know what? You're getting half of what you got before. We need it to pay down. We need to make America stronger. They would still support him.
Yeah, they just
take right out of their pockets. They would still support him.
Yeah, to them, they're being patriotic, probably.
Yeah. I mean, that's already what the drumbeat is telling us now. That's all today. Trying to tell, Fox News, Harris Faulkner.
I can't believe how people are getting in line with it.
She says,
with the temporary pain.
Yeah. She said on there something about, some of these military veterans and things like that need to just maybe look at it like how the greatest generation sacrificed during World War II. Some of this pain from the tariffs and everything and what the economic pain it's going to cause. Well, maybe you should look at that as your sacrifice. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. There's a guy that I work with that I like a lot personally, and I think of him. I hold him in high regard. He said today on a call we were talking, and he said something about market being down and everything, and all this was going on. It's like, yeah, it's crazy. And he's like, well, some short-term pain or some long-term gain. That's I'm fine with it. I mean, if tariffs were so bad, all these other countries wouldn't be doing them to us. And I didn't even respond. I changed the subject. I just couldn't. I wanted to just call him an idiot. Yeah. And I'm like, you should know better. You're a guy you went to business school. Your career has been in business. You know better. You should know better. But you're just repeating that line. That you're, like you said, how quickly they're falling in line with this. Here's a guy who should know better, who's in the business world every day, just repeating the same thing he's heard. And it's like, I almost wanted to ask him, so what is the actual mechanism that it's going to be when does the long-term gain come in? How does that work? It's from a business standpoint. Like, explain that to me academically. Yeah. There's nothing there. There's nothing. It's just repeating the same thing they've heard. And I just want to bang my head against the wall. Like, it makes zero sense. Why are you saying it?
Because a lot of these Trump supporters, to be fair, they don't watch the news. They're not heavily invested in the day-to-day news cycle.
And I don't mean to say this, I don't want to sound like elitist because, or if you don't know business, it's not that. But you have to just be informed. I'm blue collar roots. I was a military guy. When I was a Marine, I was not in business, but I stayed informed. And so you have to stay informed. You can't let people think for you, and you have to look at this and go, okay, I may not know a whole lot about how the machinations of how tariffs work, but I do know that it's going to make everything more expensive. I do know that all I'm hearing are these empty slogans or phrases: short-term pain for long-term gain. Well, I'm going to ask, as a Marine or somebody who's not business educated, how does the long-term gain work? How is what we're going through right now going to make us better? And when you listen to people, the MAGA group or whatever, they don't have an answer for you. They just go, it's going to make America more prosperous. Well, how? Yeah, and never get an answer. Just talk in circles.
All right, let's take a break. That's really, really heavy. I mean, I've said on this podcast at least once before that my thought is that Putin and Xi and Trump are trying to divide up the globe into 3 parts. But that will keep you up at night.
Yes.
But I wanted to have some fun on the other side of the break and go to a BuzzFeed article because there are some people that are having buyer's remorse on Trump. And then there's some people that are still dug in. And I just wanted to kind of read some of these talking points from these people and get your response on the other side of the break. So hold on, we'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody. I'm Jason Will. Again, I'm joined by Thomas Poole. He is a fellow raised red, living blue soldier here in my neighborhood, my neighbor, and he's not doing well, y'all. He's just not doing well with this at all. So I'm gonna try to cheer him. I'm gonna try to cheer him up a little bit and talk about some quotes from people that are having buyer's remorse. But before I do, did you see this? That JD Vance made history as the most unpopular VP ever.
No.
You didn't see that?
No. How did I miss that?
I don't know how you missed that, but isn't that like his approval rating is like -6 or something? This was a couple weeks ago because we took a week off for spring break and now we're kind of coming back. And then I also just wanted to give a shout out to Elon Musk's trans daughter.
Yes.
Vivian Jenna Wilson, just for speaking up and speaking out and being strong. And this is the one thing, like I saw a graphic the other day, I was talking about Trump and Elon. Like between them, they have like 14 kids by umpteen different wives. But they're the party of
saw that too.
Family values, which is just absolutely hilarious. So I just love her so much and wanted to point that out. And what else did I have in here? Oh, my hometown. I don't know if you saw this. Well, Doge terminated several U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service office leases across the state. But in Fairhope, Alabama, where I'm born and raised, there's been a lot of controversy. Fairhope is kind of a little bit of a blue dot in and of itself in the state. I don't think it's quite as expansive as like the Birmingham blue dot, because it is a small town. But they wanted to get I don't know how many books out of the library that were deemed inappropriate,
right.
And they said no, and so they cut their funding. All right, Trump supporters are explaining how they'll vote in the midterms, and this is something. It's interesting. I don't know. Is this typical that we're 70 days into this, 90 days into this, something like that? And
70 something.
He's talking about running for a third term.
Yep.
And I hear a lot of bluster about the midterms already. So that's interesting. But they interviewed a bunch of people, and some of these responses are hilarious. And some of them are scary, and some of them are sad. Let's read some of these and kind of see where they go. So on Social Security disability, this guy says that his wife is on Medicaid. She's in a nursing home. He voted for Trump, but now Medicaid cuts are being brought up. And Trump said he wouldn't touch Medicaid or Medicare. He also said he'd lower grocery prices, but he hasn't. His tariffs are going to ruin the economy. So he's voting Democrat now. What do you think about that?
I mean, first thing I think I'm encouraged that somebody, again, I'm kind of pessimistic, as I've already kind of said. I've been a bit cynical. So the fact that somebody can think that quickly and pivot gives me a little bit of hope that people are thinking for themselves and looking at that maybe they made a mistake and are willing to own up, admit that they've made a mistake, or at least were duped. On the other hand, it makes me sad because those things it wasn't hard to figure out what he was going to do during the campaign. It wasn't hard to figure out if you looked around a little bit that they were going to come after Medicaid and Medicare and Social Security. It wasn't the world's best kept secret. So so it's kind of,
when there's people saying though, like on Fox and Newsmax or whatever, that they're still saying he said he wouldn't touch it and he's not going to touch it. So they're really dug in on that.
right.
But I go back, I find a comparison to the groceries. There was a lot of things he said he was going to do on day one in the war in Ukraine, which Putin's making him look like a total bitch. I think,
Yes,
I don't want to say anything nice ever about Putin, but that does bring me some joy.
Yes.
But people say it's unfair to hold him to those because that's just like campaign rhetoric. And, that's just like that's like I don't know, a sales pitch in some way.
Okay.
So it's not fair to hold him to that.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on that? I look at that kind of statement. I go, that's disqualifying. You said, I tried to explain to people, because a lot of people that I am associated with on the right don't understand that we're actually like one world, one economy in a lot of ways.
Right.
And it just doesn't work like a light switch.
No. But I also remember he made it sound like it was easy and he was going to do it. Day one.
Only Trump can do it.
Only Trump can do it. I'm the one to do it. Nobody can ever do it better than me. These were things that it wasn't I'm going to try to do it. I'm going to work hard. It was just, I'm going to do it. I'm I'm the guy, the only one that can do it. And so, I thought these things were easy. And also, too, these same people, why are you voting for Trump? Price is going down and he's going to do it. And now these people are willing to say, well, trying to say it's a sales pitch or saying that it's one of those campaign promises.
It's unfair. I hear one thing I hear is it's unfair,
right?
To hold him to that, because obviously nothing can really get done on day one. But to your point, everybody really bought into it and believed it wholeheartedly prior to the election.
Yes, they did.
So it's a good segue into this next guy, this next anonymous gentleman who says, "I've voted Democrat, but I love what Trump is doing, and he needs his hands untied for the remainder of his term voting Republican." That's kind of shocking. We've got somebody who traditionally votes Democrat but loves what Trump is doing. How do you feel that his hands are being tied? Do you feel like these judges are all woke judges? And this is one of the things, this is also tied to McCain. They're saying this judge, this one particular judge who's riding Trump's ass about these deportation issues, that he's an Obama appointed judge. That's false. But that's a little frightening to me that we've got somebody who's voted Democrat who loves what he's doing. And here's the point I try to make with this.
Okay.
Is that what I think he loves is something I can also appreciate, is that the pace of change.
Yeah.
The wheels just seem to move so slowly. If you think about like Biden and the border, he did not have to wait so long. I know he wanted, I think from what my understanding is, he wanted this bipartisan solution to this problem with immigration and wanted it to go through the proper channels and just follow the protocols. But he could have done something about it on day one.
Yeah, I think you're right on track with that. I think it's for somebody to say that, I think they're enamored with the pace of change like you're talking about, the grace he still gets for anything. If the stock market went down 150 points during Biden's administration, it was, oh my God, can you believe this? Here we are now, and it's like, well, short-term pain for long-term gain.
Well, these first two have been kind of softballs.
Okay.
But this one, now we're really going to get into it here. This is like very MAGA.
Oh, wow.
I have always been a voter of Donald Trump since he entered the presidential race in 2015. He has evolved and adapted, and this is the best he's been. Almost being assassinated made him more humble and relatable. Huh? He was humble for like 20 minutes, and then he just went back to his old self. I will only vote for common sense Republicans and not far left lunatic liberals who hate this country.
Yeah.
This person's actually including you essentially in this very broad statement as somebody who could have been in a position to give their life for this country throughout your military service. So that's one of the things that, just the haterade. I had somebody send me a friend request, an agent send me a friend request the other day, and I accepted it. And then I looked at the very first post on her personal Facebook page, and it was a post from a site that was like Democrats are communist memes. And I was like, bye, and unfriended her immediately. I don't know. How do they reconcile? It's funny that these things still exist. I've heard this a lot. I've seen it a lot. People using the word Democrat with the word communist. Ronald Reagan, speaking of Ronald Reagan, that's something that should roll over in his grave if he knew how far Trump has his tongue up Putin's ass.
Yes. Yep. I'm old enough to remember the people that raised me They knew Russia was the enemy. They were right there supporting Reagan in our country. And now to see these same people who think that Putin's not all that bad, I just want to be like, think for yourself what happened to you. What Ronald Reagan would be a woke liberal now in today's MAGA world.
Yeah.
He'd be a woke liberal.
Wow. That's a powerful statement.
Look at the comments he made, the video where he was talking about tariffs. He was talking about tariffs should not be used on a wide-scale basis, should not be used as a general public policy. They should be targeted for certain limited temporary measures.
You see, at first, when someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time. What eventually occurs is, first, homegrown industries start relying on government protection in the form of high tariffs. They stop competing and stop making the innovative management and technological changes they need to succeed in world markets. And then, while all this is going on, something even worse occurs. High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. The result is more and more tariffs, higher and higher trade barriers, and less competition. So soon, because of the prices made artificially high by tariffs that subsidize inefficiency and poor management, people stop buying. Then the worst happens. Markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs.
Who could have ever conceived that these people that raised us, that were, in the Cold War, that were just USA, USA. I mean, the Rocky IV movie, we all hated Russia and what they represented. Who would have ever thought those same people would be cucks for a guy who was a KGB agent at the time? He was a KGB agent at the time, and now they all, because Trump tells them that Putin's not a bad guy, and he's got a great relationship, they don't think Putin's a bad guy.
They really,
they really don't.
There was interviews at multiple MAGA rallies, and people would say, if I can't remember what the scenario was, but it was like basically Joe Biden or Putin. Yeah. That's what it was.
I remember during the first Trump administration, I guess maybe the campaign, do you remember the shirts that people wear at Trump rallies, campaign rallies, that would say, I'd rather be Russian than Democrat? Do you remember those shirts? That was during the first. I'd rather be Russian than Democrat. And that's that messaging. Their messaging is on point at all times. It's consistent, very targeted, and that's part of it. That's part of the demonization of the other side.
What's interesting, too, I really feel this is true. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but I thought throughout the campaign that a lot of high-ranking Republicans, like people like Lindsey Graham, people like that, would say he's going to do something with these tariffs, but it's not going to be anything
right
like you think it's going to be. And now you see those people on the news that are falling in line with a temporary pain thing. Oh, this is a genius move. This is what we need. And I'm going, wow.
Yeah.
All right, listen to this. I voted for Trump, and it has become one of the biggest mistakes of my life. I am embarrassed and ashamed of myself. I will not declare who or what party I will vote for moving forward, but you can bet I will do my due diligence thoroughly this time. The last line of this is what really kind of chapped my ass, in addition to caught my attention, but about how many people just didn't do their due diligence. We had a very unique opportunity where we had each candidate had a 4-year record to stand on. And so you could do these side-by-side comparisons, and nobody looked at that.
That comment triggers me because, it drives me crazy. I mean, how much on, social media and everything, pick up your phone. I mean, there was so many people trying to say, hey, I was one of them. I got political on social media this past election cycle, and I've never had before. And I was just basically like, come on, guys, look at what the other side is, and to say that, and there's so many people I knew who just weren't doing their due diligence. So many. And it was just, you can only tell them so much.
Now, this one I think may trigger you also. Voting Democrat because I love our country which is for the people, of the people, and by the people. It really chaps my ass every time I see Hegseth's like for the people tattoo on his arm. And the fact that he can't go anywhere without rolling up his sleeve and showing his fucking tats. But it's like we're for the people if they're white or if they have money, if they're privileged. That's really what we're talking about.
Right.
This person goes on to say, much of what is happening under the current administration runs parallel to how Hitler came into power. We should learn from history. A lot of people would say that's just dramatic. You're just being dramatic. They're using, as you've said, they've used disinformation to build their trust, gain their loyalty, really empower them, created doubt about the media, doubt about our judicial system, just so doubt and fear about just about everything, which is absolutely runs parallel to not only Hitler, but a lot of other psycho crazy leaders.
Autocratic regimes.
Yeah. Well, I think we've already established that. I mean, you think that the goal here is some sort of, maybe it's not full blown autocracy, but it is some form of that.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is an autocratic regime. That's what I think what their end game is to have an oligarchy that is going to resemble either Russia or Hungary, where we have elections, show elections, not real elections, and they will have control. That's what they want. I fully believe that. And what's so funny about what you said, they're being dramatic. That was all the same stuff that people would say about Barack Obama the first time I was talking about earlier. Like you got on Fox News, oh my God, it's socialists going to take over this country. They're going to ditch the Constitution. Well, here you have people that are actually doing that now. And in the midst of it, you're being dramatic, but it's okay for them to say that about the left.
Yeah.
Before it even happened, and now here we are in the midst of it. You're being dramatic. He's not really going to do that. It's not. It's unfair to compare him to Hitler. How dare you, Thomas, compare him to Hitler? Well, I mean, if you pay attention to history and look at what happened in the 30s in Germany, it's like following the same playbook. I mean, it's not hyperbole to make that comparison.
All right, this is really going to be troubling for you.
Okay,
I think this may be the most troubling one, and we are we're about halfway done with these. I approve of what Trump and his administration are doing. An audit of the government needed to be done a long time ago, and illegal criminals needed to be removed. Illegal alien criminals. I'm sure that's what he meant. Along with those who were told by courts to leave and those who refused to go through our process of becoming legal citizens. No trans men in women or girls sports. No more wokeness and DEI programs, as they are all forms of racism and do nothing but divide us.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. That's a really hard thing because, man, I mean, on one hand, I know that the reason we're even talking about trans people at all is because it was an issue that Republican strategists knew hit and got people riled up. And so they've used that to full advantage to rile up the base, to get people upset and angry. So on one hand, I think about that, and I think that I would just say that if anybody that, thank God that I did not have a child that was trans, because I see that there's almost zero empathy and care for that. I mean, I've seen people that have to deal with that, and they're basically on their own. And so I have a lot of care and empathy there. Having said all that, I do think that I kind of agree with you on the thing about the sports, though. It's one of those things that I hate to say pick your battles, because for some people that's their whole world, but like if you want to look at us getting back to upholding democracy, they have definitely put the whole trans thing on the left, and there's no empathy or care there from that side. They look at trans as basically, I don't know, evil, that they're all making it up, and so it is kind of the burden of the left, and I think that I agree that from a pragmatic standpoint, you have to say, okay, if you're gonna be trans, then you can't play sports.
So this next quote kind of, I think, feeds into this narrative a little bit, and I think this might be the hardest one for you to hear. Eventually, all will begin to smooth out, and we will begin to enjoy security in all aspects of our lives. It's only been 3 months, people. It took the Biden administration 8 years to destroy the U.S.
Yeah.
So recovering will take time. Or maybe some grew comfortable with the prior administration's not so great policies and can't wrap their minds around sound give back to the people policies.
I would say that what they would be talking about would be the acceptance of trans people as a community.
Yeah.
To support and have empathy for the trans community is one thing that's led to destructiveness in our country. Yeah, so that would be one thing I think they're talking about. I think the other thing, that drumbeat of disinformation, my dad is an Army retiree. He talked about this current generation, this military as being woke military.
Right.
He read an article where some high level colonel or somebody got relieved of their command because they cussed at some young soldiers, and it's like, and he takes that as for face value, and so he would say, well, this wokeness has made our military soft.
Yeah.
When in reality, what happened with that story, I looked it up after he was talking about it, is the guy that was in question was drunk, was very abusive. It wasn't just that he said cuss words; he was very abusive. He used his position, to be a big bully, that kind of thing. And so that was more to the story than just that. But in my dad's mind, and what that person's probably saying is, this wokeness has led to our military being soft. We need our military to be hard, and we need them to be tough, and to kill animals with their bare hands and be, just ready to fight at all, at a moment's notice. So I think that's part of what they're talking about participation trophies we give kids in
that's a great
sports,
example.
that led to that, so that's one of the things I think they're talking about, that we've destroyed or have had a bad impact on our nation. Now we've got this whole generation of soft children, who don't know what it's like to lose, which couldn't be further from the truth. And so they look at those kinds of things as we've gone soft, or those kinds of, we've become too accepting. And I would just say, no, I think it's made us better because we focus less on fear, leading by fear, and we lead by trying to motivate people and trying to be a shining, be a better example. Truly lead people and get people to get behind you because you've inspired them, versus the old school of just, I'm going to make this guy scared to death of me. So I think those are kind of the things that they're talking about there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some people would probably say like taking down some of these Confederate monuments.
Great
would be
example.
another example.
Great example.
But there's no quote unquote destruction. I mean, they're talking about things that Trump is doing now that may take decades to undo, if they can ever be undone.
Right.
All right. There was a good one in here. Let me see if I keep scrolling past this, but I will now, more than ever, vote straight ticket Republican. Democrats are turds on steroids.
There you go. Yeah. There you go.
Turds on steroids. This one, we're on number 33. This guy says that Trump's doing exactly what he said he would do. Grocery prices and gas prices are going down. You're seeing some graphics and memes talk about eggs getting cheaper, gas getting cheaper, inflation numbers going down. That was before Liberation Day. But yeah, so some people are like, oh, this shit's working.
Yeah, because if you just tell them that enough, then they'll believe it, just like basically everything they talk about.
I'm voting for President Donald Trump and all Republican candidates. I am no longer a Democrat after the last 4 years of Biden. So to me, I don't know. I see this argument very, very clearly, because if Biden had just been that one-term president, where would we be? I think the guy's just old. I think, and I saw this in my stepdad, who was a career Republican member of the Alabama State House of Representatives, and he just could not let it go. And I'd be like, dude, you're so tired. I mean, he was always going to events. I mean, he really did not have a personal life. It was always in the public eye, always going to things and it was like he never had a day off. But he just got addicted to it.
Yeah.
He got addicted to the notoriety. I mean, he was famous in his own little right.
Yeah, right.
So it was very, very sad. But I think that's what happened to Biden. Here's one. Democrats. I'm voting Democrat from here on out because Trump doesn't follow law and order or the Constitution.
I wish more people could see that.
I had a friend who said that the police officer that died post January 6th, that he didn't die on January 6th, that he was probably going to die anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's ridiculous. It seems like to me, again, it's just a 50-50 scenario. I mean, some people are like, shit, what did I do?
Yeah.
But other people are very, very dug in. It's very sad.
Disinformation propaganda machine is working. And a lot of those comments, I mean, the one about the prices are down. Like, no, but if you say it long enough and repeated it long enough and don't blink, then people will start believing it. But memes out there saying it, people will start believing it. So I think the machine is doing its job. It does encourage, some of those comments encourage me that at least some people are actually thinking about it. And, you can obviously tell that some of those people have been kind of like me, been raised Democrats are the enemy, and at least are now seeing with their own eyes and reacting to it in real time that, hey, this is not what I signed up for. So that does give me some hope, at least.
Yeah.
That people can do that, because I like I said before, I'm kind of cynical about this whole thing and with this last election, and I'm losing faith in the American people to be able to see what's happening to them. And so for some people to be able to say that, at least it's encouraging to a small degree. So.
If we had a whiteboard, I mean, if we were surrounded by whiteboard walls and we just started writing out like every ridiculous thing Trump's ever said or done, every lie he's ever told, it would fill up these walls. But there's some like really glaring examples, shit he said and done to me that are just totally disqualifying, that people just roll over and just like, that's Trump. He just bloviates that type of thing.
Right.
But to me, it's very dangerous where we're heading in terms of, because it's like this. We're for equality for all except for these group of people, or we're for free speech except for this. You brought up the gun thing. I mean, people to this day feel like they have to vote for a Republican or somebody's going to come into their house and take their guns. It's a very disturbing reality that we're in. But I knew, like, after that assassination attempt and him holding his fist in the air, I knew we were screwed.
Yeah, same.
I knew it was going to be a freaking a win for him. There was nothing we could do about it.
I'm right there with you. I remember when it happened. I remember how I felt when I saw it happen. I remember that same feeling. I remember like saying, fuck, how are you going to win over the rubes in this country that are going to just fall for that? They're just going to eat that up. Which ought to tell you something. That was he really? I don't know.
Yeah.
We don't even know this guy's. I mean, do you know the assassin's name? The would-be assassin's name?
No, we've never figured out what the motive was, or
no. Funny how that all disappeared, right?
Nobody's ever talked about like politically.
Yeah. I have my doubts about it was a legit, assassination.
Wow, you're gonna leave us with a little bit of a conspiracy theory here, Thomas.
which I hate to do. I hate to do because at first I wasn't thinking that, but as I got to looking at it more and more, we don't know anything about this guy. It's funny how it all just went away. When you look at other real assassination attempts, they couldn't be more different than this example. And so for somebody to stop and wait a minute and put his arms up, everything was just perfect for that. I don't know. I'm not a conspiracy theorist guy, but that one I have questions. I'll say, and I just don't think that most people. I'm probably feeding into now. Well, Donald Trump's not most people, huh? But like most people aren't going to have the presence of mind to stop and do that because they're scared shitless,
Yeah.
And so the fact that he wasn't doesn't make him tough, because he's not. He's a paper tiger. He ran away from military service.
Makes him a psychopath,
if anything. And so, but he probably knew what was going on. That's all I'm going to say. So.
Wow. Well, Thomas Poole, I hope you've been able to kind of purge. Some things. Maybe this helps, and you'll come back and join us again.
Yeah.
When Sloan's with us, and we'll just have a full roundtable discussion about this, and we can stir the pot on this trans athlete issue a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Thank y'all for joining us. I think the easiest thing to do is just Google Raise Red Living Blue. We're all over social media. Why TikTok still exists? What do you think is going to happen with that? You think Bezos is going to get it? Or?
Yeah, well, Amazon's putting a bid in for it, is what I heard today. So it's been such a whirlwind anyway of being banned and brought back. And
I mean, Trump was all for banning it until somebody gave him $100 million or some shit.
That's right.
Towards his campaign. It was a big number. I'm not sure exactly what it was.
Right.
But anyway, Raise Red, Live in Blue. We'd love to hear from you. Comment, DM, reach out to us. And that's all we've got for today. We'll see you next week for episode 19. Hopefully Sloan will be back. Thank you all for tuning in.
Politics of fear and hate are wrong. We love you and politics of compassion
America,
and love are right.
we are not going back.